It's so good to be here. I was born in Baltimore, so I claim this, even though I moved away when I was like 3. But this is a beautiful day and a wonderful festival, and it's such an honor to be included in it. My sister actually is in town in Atlanta this weekend, and I knew that when I got the offer to come here. And I can't believe a literary festival beat out over time with your sister. I'm like, Mom's there, you'll be fine. But it's great to be here. So thank you all for coming. Today I thought I would talk a little bit about, since it's the book club. Oh, I want to thank, of course, the festival and the Baltimore Sun as well for putting this all together. Since it is the book club selection, I was going to sort of focus most of my talk around this novel. But I'll start with a little bit of background about how I came to be a writer. For those of you, how many of you are writers out there? Are you most just readers or writers too? You're a writer? What are you working on? A story? Well, good. We could talk about that a little bit too in the Q&A at the end. But just a very brief background. I used to be a lawyer. I went to law school at University of Virginia, sort of as a result of having good grades in college and being afraid to really pursue this full time right out of college. So I went to law school, which seemed like it's sort of a safe thing to do. And I loved law. I loved being in school. I could be in school forever. But I got out. I got a job in a big Manhattan law firm, and my first day, I'm filling out my paperwork and tax forms and getting at my desk and learning how to work the phone. And I get my very first assignment from a partner. And I knew that day one I had just made this terrible mistake. But I had about $100,000 worth of loans at that point. So I had this plan to pay them off and then go write. And so in the meantime, I wrote a book. It took me 5 years to write, 5 years to pay back my loans. And I got an agent and sent it in and was so excited, and I got all my rejection letters back. So if you're in that process, you can find that little video. If you Google my name and AOL, there's this little thing that you've got rejection letters, but it talks about the incredibly rude letter that I got from my own agent. It was like, they all rejected it. Not even a punctuation mark at the end. Just go along your way. So it'll inspire those of you who are going through that process to stay after it. But so anyway, at the end of that sort of disappointing journey, I made the decision that I wanted to try it again, and I wanted to try it again full time. So I quit my job. It was right after 9/11. My flight was actually on the 16th of September, which was strange. It was the first night that they let international flights leave JFK, and I moved to London, and I gave myself 1 year to write this book. I reassured my parents that I could get my job back probably if I needed to at that point in time. And 14 months later, I had finished Something Borrowed, and the results were very different the second time around. I got a new agent, and I got a couple different offers, and 2-book deal, and I've been writing ever since. So I tease my children and my husband that was the happiest day of my life, over their birth and my marriage to him. But when you're married, you have all that pressure of it's you have to look right, and you know how weddings can be. And with kids, there's all that pain involved. So it was just this day of pure bliss. But I do feel lucky for the journey that's happened as a result of that day. And so I'll talk a little about where we belong now. Fast forward about 8 years, and this is my 6th book. It's about two women. One's 36, who's harbored the secret for her entire adult life, as you heard a bit earlier, of the baby that she gave away for adoption. And of course, the other woman is really a young woman, 18 years old, who decides that she wants to find her mother. And the book really begins with that knock on the door of, I think you're my mother. And it's about the individual journeys, but the one they take together too, and how we're all sort of searching for an understanding of who we are and our identity. So I'm asked a lot. I just completed a book tour, about 10-city, 12-city book tour about 3 weeks ago, and just asked countless times from the media and at book signings, what was your inspiration for this book? And for all the other 5 books, I really could say something very specific. I could remember like the first seed. But for this one, I had Janelle. Hey, my Facebook friend. She puts on her glasses. Why do you try to disown me at these things? She's my girl. See, Facebook is really good for some things. You can meet real, legitimate friends through Facebook. Anyway, where was I? Lost my train of thought. Thanks, Janelle. Oh, the inspiration. I think the one of the early seeds was wanting to talk about a secret, the effect that a really big secret can have on our lives. And, so many people, it seems, have these, really the big, all-encompassing secrets. And, what does that do to the person who has a secret, and what does it do to his or her relationships? And is the saying, the truth will set you free, true? So all of those things I was interested in exploring. But there's a lot of very grim secrets. I didn't want to spend 18 months with incest, or I've done affairs before. I didn't want to sort of do the dual family and that whole thing. So adoption seemed to be a way to explore these themes with a more positive, potentially positive backdrop. So the other thing is just adoption in and of itself has always been an interesting thing to me. I was actually asked quite a few times, which I've taken as a very big compliment by so many readers who have been adopted or have adopted children. What is my firsthand experience with adoption? And I've actually printed all those emails and saved them because they mean a lot to me. In fact, one of my husband's best friends, neither one of us knew she was adopted and told us this whole story. It was just amazing that we didn't know that. But she said, what's Emily's experience with it? And really, I had no firsthand experience other than my lab partner from my freshman year in high school. Her name was Dory, and right after she moved to Chicago from Columbus, she left and was gone for the duration of the year. And obviously she had a baby, and she put the baby up for adoption. Came back to school sophomore year with pictures of this baby, her son, and all she knew was that the baby had gone to Texas. But she didn't know where, she didn't know what his name was, and she was not allowed to have contact with him until he turned 18. But for certainly the next 3 years while we were in high school, and I feel somewhat certain that she did so beyond that, but she would write letters to him, in study hall when other people are writing to their boyfriends and their friends and writing notes. She would write these long letters, and she would sing songs, and she would send them presumably to the agency who was holding on to these records, and then would give it to the child when he turned 18. So when I started to write this book, I thought about the fact that baby is now 24 years old or something like that. You can do the math there. I'm 40. That was freshman year, so which was shocking. And I thought, well, he's 24, so 6 years ago he made this decision of whether he wanted to read those letters or not. And did he get in touch with his birth mother? Was he not interested in that relationship? If he did get in touch with her, how did his own parents feel, about this decision? Were they jealous? Did they discourage it? What has Dory since had children, biological children that she kept, and how does that color? There's so much, I think, rich terrain to explore with adoption that I've always found very compelling and interesting. So that was another inspiration part of it. Let's see, the Kirby, just Kirby yourself writing the book is told in alternating perspectives between Kirby and Marion, and I was a little intimidated at first to write Kirby's story because she's She is 18, and I'm, as I mentioned, 40. And she's a very different teenager than I was. She's, I was more of a joiner, joined this club and that club, a soccer team, editor of the newspaper, sort of had friends in different groups and kind of got along with everyone. And Kirby's a little darker, a little more, isolating herself and not really wanting to do these things. And so I thought that would be another additional challenge. And not only is there a gap in our age and what's currently happening in our lives, but I wasn't like her even when I was 18. But I went back and read my journals. I kept journals every day of my life for like the first day of 5th grade through like well beyond law school, which is like really cuts more to OCD than my commitment to my writing. But I did. I kept them and I went back and I read them, and I was just hit by the sense that I wasn't as happy as I thought I had been in high school. And it certainly the majority of the entries were just, things were just not right in my world at all. It's just this relationship wasn't working out. I didn't get invited to this dance, or I was sad about this. Just this heavy heart throughout was a theme, and I think that's sort of part of what we all go through. And I'd just forgotten. So once I got into her head and started to really connect with her, she was easy for me to write. She was one of the easiest characters with the closest connection I felt to any of the characters that I've created. And I love her. I miss her now, and I might write about her more. But you're so sweet. She's going. So she was easy. Marion, I thought, would be less of a challenge because she's closer to my age. She lives living in New York. I lived in New York. We're both professionals. So I thought it wouldn't be that hard, but to get into the mindset of a woman who made this incredibly, really the most generous decision you can make, one person can make, to give their child to another. It's amazing, and I'm just in awe of it, but I just know that I could not do that. And so that chapter, that scene when she remembers what that was like, was just, it took me way longer than it should have, because it was just so difficult to really put myself in her shoes and to feel that and to experience that and to see that she was making that decision. So that was a challenge. Also, she clearly didn't handle it well. Has anyone finished it? I won't give it away, but the part, this doesn't give it away for you, for example, because I know you're dying to crack this open tonight. How many guys have been dragged here today? Just one? Okay, let's say it this way. How many guys are here because they really wanted to come as opposed to pleasing to the person that they're sitting with? Oh, that's nice. We have one. Yellow shirt. So, what was I saying? I always do that. I lose my train of thought. I told you, right? What was I saying? Someone. This doesn't spoil it. But there's a scene, thank you. But this scene where she takes Kirby shopping, it's just, what was she thinking, right? And, my editor read that scene, and she sort of was like, what she thinks. I said, yeah, I'm appalled by it too, let's be clear, And she said, well, maybe we should make it somehow more clear that you're appalled by it. I'm like, I don't think the reader needs to understand that Emily Giffin would not shop with her adopted daughter were she to come back, or, her biological child. But I kind of got her point. I think what her point is we need to make Marion more aware that what she did was wrong in short order, lest the reader becomes so turned off by her behavior. Although you all know that that's sort of my trademark, trying to take you to the brink of being so thoroughly, disapproving. And I think people in my characters in very unsympathetic situations and make you try to hope that you root for them in spite of the wrong thing that they're doing, the unlikable choice they're making, because I really think that's what life's all about. That's what we all make mistakes, We hurt people. You've hurt you've hurt him before. He's hurt you before, right? I mean, you don't have to get up here and share with us, but it happens in every relationship, and that's sort of what I like to explore. But I will say that after I had written the manuscript, but it hadn't been published yet, my brother-in-law read it, and he just came into the lake house that we were renting in Wisconsin, and with my family, and he said, "Oh, I read the book." He's like, "It's awesome." He's like, "But Marion is, such a bitch." And my sister came around the corner and was she's my biggest, supporter, and she's like, "That is so rude." And I'm like, "Sarah, she's fictional. It's really cool if he doesn't like her. It's fine." But I think that her journey was a little more subtle. It's a little more clear what Kirby was looking for, and I think with Marion's, it was more about the sense that she had made these choices in her life, a lot of them, and they sort of accumulate over time that were about doing what she thought she should do, or thought she wanted to do, or thought it squared with her identity of who she was and who she is, rather than like what she really wanted. And so I think a lot of us kind of find our way in that situation in the course of relationships or jobs or anything else. And I certainly have, and I could relate to her in that sense. So in sum, I think the book is just about those sorts of questions, who we are and where we're going, and who will come with us, and very central issues of our identity and what makes us who we are. So that's kind of the rundown of where we belong. It has been optioned, which is exciting. A wonderful producer who's really committed to making smart, chick flicks, as they say, romantic comedies with depth. So I'm excited about that. We have a little casting sub-page going on my Facebook page, so please chime in with your comments. I'm dying to know what you think about that, and all the men in the room. So that's been exciting. The movie stuff has been really just sort of a side journey. I was asked just last night by a friend, "Did you write this book because Something Borrowed, of course, came out 2011? So now that the books are being turned into movies, did you write this book with that in mind?" And I can honestly say that I can't do that. Every time I start to do that, it's sort of like it's the same phenomenon as writing a book and then writing a scene, like anything remotely related to sex, and then thinking that my dad's going to read it. I have to delete the whole thing and start over. And that's sort of when I start to try to think too much about this book coming to life on a big screen. I think it changes my focus. So I really just try to write the book and then see what happens afterwards. But so I would love to, with our time we have, I'd love to hear your questions and talk about whatever it is you want to discuss, from Facebook to movies to writing. Sure.
Oh, here you go. So I think there's a chapter with Marianne and her father, and instead of she comes back home, and I'm not going to give anything away for those of you who haven't read it, but there's a scene where they're in the car and they sort of played that game.
Yeah.
And I was really curious about where did that come from, and also how hard was it for you to kind of think about the father's perspective in all of this?
I heard everything up until where did that come from? What was the last thing you said?
The father's perspective, 'cause, how challenging was it for you to write that part as well?
Oh, that part of the story? You okay? No. It's brutal. Is that anyone? Sure? She said keep going. It feels a little like, lack of compassion to just be like, well. I was just saying how at the end of my Heart of the Matter tour, I got into a head-on collision on my way to Borders. It was crazy. And I went and did the signing. Aren't I cool? With airbag burns and a bloody lip. I was saying it was more that I was in shock than anything else. But I looked like a total rock star. Let's talk about my book. Are they okay though? Okay. So, yes, your question about, that's, you know what, I've not had that question before. about the father. That was, one of the things I love about writing is exploring all these different relationships. It's just like they're all so relationship driven, and the father-daughter one is obviously one. I have a father and we're close, and I tried to think about what it would be like if I had a secret like that from him. And I do think, my opinions about secrets change throughout the course of the book. It's sort of, I thought, well, it depends on the relationship. Like, you don't owe it to everyone you meet, even good friends, to tell them everything about you. But at the same time, I think there are certain secrets that if you keep them, they really will change your relationship. And of course, I don't want to give away the fact that and you guys have had like 6 weeks to read it. I'm going to just say it. No, but you know how he didn't really, like sign language here. I'll talk about it when you come up. The game came from, there's a lot of people ask if my books are autobiographical. They're not at all in terms of plot, but obviously when you're writing little scenes, you borrow from your own life. And I did used to play that game with my uncle, like turn left, turn right, my mother's younger brother. So that was something that I had played, and so that's where I got that. But that scene it was very important to me because I think it shows. Well, I don't want to give, my answer would give it away. It should be a requirement for this next year. Like, you must read the book or be okay with the spoilers, because I can't really answer your question thoroughly. But I will when you come to get your book signed. Right here?
I think that you made the men like so surreal, so wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. You like the men? See, at least I'm not male bashing, right?
Yeah, but then the moms are really. Oh.
She says that her question is, well, I didn't really let you finish. You think the men are too?
Yeah, and the moms you made really
right.
like the adopted mom. I think you kind of were hard on her. You know? Like, she's a little nicer, but I mean,
Yeah.
But the men were just so surreal.
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting because I think we are harder on, as women, I think, our sisters than our brothers, and we're harder on our mothers than we expect more in some ways. At least I think I've fallen into that trap. As for my treatment of men versus women, I've had people say that I'm like, Nick in Heart of the Matter. It's just like horrible, and he's just, he's a symbol of all things wrong with men in this world. And so I think really it's very character dependent. And, I am always careful when I'm writing not to make my story sort of, I don't want the message I don't want there to be a message. I want it to be more about the characters and their journey, because I think once you get into that, what's the message or what point are you making about things, and, you fall into that same trap that I was talking about earlier of being sort of stymied in the creative process. So. And that's the other thing that I do. When you create characters, for the first third of the book, you feel like you're in control. You're sort of the puppeteer, and you can have them like the music you want them to like, and weigh what you want them to weigh, and have the degree, and go to this school, and you just create their favorite color, their hair color, everything about them. But by the time you get into sort of that third of the way into the book, halfway into the book, they become to me real, and I'm no longer manipulating their course. I'm really thinking, now what would she do here? How would she feel about this? What choice would she make? A really good example of that is Love the One You're With, which you all have had 4 years to read, so I don't mind spoiling that one. But I wanted her to be with Leo. I love Leo. I think he's hot and he's smart. And I don't think he came back, he was sorry, but Margot, let's just do a book club of Love the One You're With. But, a lot of people feel very strongly the other way. In fact, when I wrote that book, my sister and my best friend are so different. My sister was just adamant that she not even kiss Leo, that she not even cross any line. And my best friend was like, why didn't you just have them sleep together? She's like, come on, just write an alternate ending, at least for me. So you see, we're all very different in our interpretations and what we think should happen. But what I tried to convey to them, what I said to them is, I can't just decide what I want Ellen to do. because Ellen's fully formed and created, and we have to go like with what she would do, and I think she would have chosen him. That's not to say their marriage is going particularly well right now, I've heard, but I'm just kidding. I haven't thought about them in a couple of years. So, although that movie is next to be made.
The other thing is, I thought it was pretty significant the way you had Cameron give her a letter, and then later you have him say, "Oh, she's going to college."
Oh, that you're talking Love the One You're With still.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She's back in the Green Book.
Yeah.
She's back in 2008. Right, but I mean, that was her sort of saving.
No. I'm talking about the
this one.
Yeah.
The letter. Yeah,
letter,
there's letters in all my books.
But then, and you don't know what's in the letter.
Right.
I mean, and then later he says, "Oh, she's going to college." So.
Right.
You kind of just. You left that kind of open. That was.
Well, the other thing is you don't really know how perfect Conrad is or isn't. I mean, because you don't see, you don't really see that. I mean, he could have a drug problem for all we know. We didn't really delve that far into his life. I mean, not that a drug problem would, permit you from being a perfectly lovely human being, but to your point, he seems perfect. We don't really know that. You'll find out in 2 years, though. I'm just kidding.
Well, it was very good.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for your questions, too.
Hi. Will you ever revisit Rachel and Dex and Darcy, or are you done with that chapter post Something Blue?
Well, did you see the Darcy Diary? Did you read that?
Yeah, I read
So
it.
I kind of revisited them a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think that I will. I really do think I will at some point. But every time, I'm faced with I have a 2-book contract, and it's like time to write the next book. At that given juncture, there's always been something that I've wanted to write about more. And then with the movie, I was spending entirely too much time thinking about them because I was very, very involved in that script and that process, and so it was as if I spent 4 years with them in the beginning, and then another year and a half, 2 years with them. I mean, it really is. It's like you get tired of the people. They start to you just get tired of them. I remember my father doesn't read novels except for mine. He's just a nonfiction guy, but he said at one point, like, how are Dex and Rachel doing? Like, he's like, actually, I think he said Rachel and that fellow. She was, my husband's like, they're not real, just like with they're not living in the basement with Monica and Chandler, was actually what he said. I'm like, oh, I wish they were. The Monica and Chandler part, particularly. All of them. Rachel, most of all.
You write so well in first person. How do you keep it with their thoughts, just in first person, without going like totally descriptive and everything?
Well, thank you. She asked about writing in the first person. For those who didn't hear in the back, the only time that I've written in the third person so far was in the Valerie chapters of Heart of the Matter. Everything else has been the first person, and I like the intimacy that comes with, like, you get so much of what's in someone's head. This one, I was concerned because it's the dual narrative, but it's first person. So I was concerned that the reader would get confused when everything's in the first person. But and so originally I had the first third thing going, but I didn't like it for this book. First of all, I think it was important that both of their stories be told in the first person. Second of all, I don't think it was confusing because they were so different. And there was a third. I think I had a sense in Heart of the Matter, which, sorry, I'm talking about other books, but it's kind of helpful to answer questions. But I wanted to align myself. I wanted to be on Tessa's side, and that was sort of a way of like starting the book of like I'm in Tessa's camp, and then it was interesting that I came around to completely seeing Valerie's point of view and feeling her pain and having like the utmost empathy for her and probably wanting to be friends with her more than be friends with Tess. But I didn't feel like I needed to start out the book with that, with siding with anyone on this one. So I think that's, but as far as keeping it straight, I just think if I think it takes time. Are you writing in the first person now?
It's the first person view from 3 different characters.
Yeah, that can be challenging.
So.
If you find that you're getting confused at all, then your reader definitely will, and I would jettison one of them.
Yeah.
And then maybe consider doing a third person or some, but just play around with it, because, I sometimes have to change how I'm doing it or writing it, or I write in the present tense versus the past tense. Like Something Borrowed was written in the past tense, right? And borrowed in blue in the present, I think. I mean, which is, it's a minor thing unless you're like 14 chapters in and you have to go back and redo everything.
I'm already forgetting some
was
stuff I've
instead
written.
of right. So it's nice to straighten it out in the beginning. That's what I wish I were, an outliner. If I just have this complete outline and roadmap, and it's so much more efficient. I could get a book out a year if I were an outliner, but I'm not an outliner. Instead, I'm just like a organic, like Mosier, like, I changed my mind, and then it's an inefficient way to write a book, for sure, because you end up scrapping. Like you might scrap one of your girls. Yeah. But don't be afraid to scrap. Yeah. Don't ever be so, like, I've written these 22 pages that I can't get rid of them, because you can use them again someday. That's what I think. So.
Hi. You could talk a little bit about what it was like to sort of work on the script and just watch your book made into a movie. I just want to hear more about that, because it just seems like almost like a surreal thing for an author to watch your work take on a whole new medium. It
was. Everyone heard her from the back about the movie being made. It really was. It was crazy. It's a gradual thing, because your books are optioned a lot, and then nothing happens. So Something Borrowed had been optioned maybe 4 years before that by somebody else, and then that option expired, and then Ed Burns and Aaron Lubin, who had it, the rights, they still ended up having them, but they sort of shared them with Molly Smith and Hilary Swank. So when then Molly and Hilary got on board, and then Molly was filming The Blind Side in Atlanta and came down, and asked to meet with me, and so I met with her. And at that moment, I think, so the book had been optioned in some way or another for years, but at that moment, sitting there with her, having a drink, like while she was taking a break from The Blind Side, it kind of hit me, like, she's really going to make this movie. Like, they have the jack to get it done. They're gonna do it. It's gonna happen. And it was that moment was like one of those, just I can remember thinking this is probably going to be a movie, and it is. It was another moment that I remember was walking on set for the first time, and they weren't even filming yet. They were getting the lighting and the costumes and the makeup colors and everything like kind of set and picked, but Jennifer Goodwin was like just sitting there behind the cameras. And I walked up, and Dex Colin Egglesfield was there, and for a second, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so nice to meet you. And for a second, I had that feeling of I'm meeting Rachel and Dex, and then I had to say, like, okay, it's Jennifer Goodwin and a really hot actor named Colin Egglesfield. So hot. He's really, really nice too. He's a nice person. But he was dressed in this suit that he's wearing. I think later in the movie, when is he wearing it? I think it's like an office scene, but he's like, do you like this? Do you think Dex would wear this? And then he's like, what do you think about these? And he's like, 3 different sunglasses. He's like, which ones do you think Dex would wear? And I'm standing there with my best friend, and she's like, this is so weird. But it was. I'm like, Dex would wear those glasses, and I don't know about that jacket. But then the costume designer kind of got mad, kind of got in a tiff. They're like, get the author off set. But I was always careful not to be that author, to insert myself too much in the process. I tried. There were moments when I kind of got excited and lost sight of that vow to myself. But I think it was important. My involvement was significant because I was able to control myself and not chime in when I wasn't asked. And I viewed myself as a consultant on the project, and they kept asking me because it was like having a free consultant. So it worked out really well. And they actually have the rights to Something Blue and Heart of the Matter. And Heart of the Matter is being written right now by Jake Gyllenhaal's mother, and Maggie, but I focus on Jake. So, so yeah, it was crazy. And then the third moment that was like whoa was when you're actually sitting there at the premiere and you're looking around and it's just you can't believe that all these people are on the red carpet and walking into this movie theater, and this like I thought they did a really good job. So it's a really solid romantic comedy, and all of this is happening because of characters that I just conjured up in my head, as I was writing a book in London, 7 years before. So it is. I mean, the word is overused, but it really was surreal for me in a lot of ways. It's a cool experience. Right here.
Sort of a follow-up question. You write really strong, vivid descriptions of your characters, and so Darcy is very clearly dark-haired and tall,
Right.
and Rachel is not so tall, and she's got like that dishwater blonde kind of hair. And obviously Jennifer Goodwin and Kate Hudson are the complete opposite
Right.
of that. How did you feel about them sort of appropriating the characters in that way?
Sure. She's asking about the casting and how the physical descriptions in my books did not jive with the, with Jennifer Goodwin's closer, but with Kate Hudson certainly. Again, I really tried to let go of this is my book. I wanted the movie to reflect the characters and their choices and the spirit and the feel of the book, which is why the only real thing that I ever objected to, like openly, like strenuous, like asked to be changed, like please, change this, was when Ethan professed his love to Rachel at the end, because that just was not. I didn't feel like that was consistent with who the characters were and their story. That said, I think it worked in the movie form, and many, many more people go to see a movie than read the book. So you have to do what works for the movie. But Kate, if you had seen the other options and you had seen the audition tapes and you known like who was available and who wasn't available and who was already, you always think it's the universe of choices for your movie, but it's not. It's like someone's pregnant, someone's working on something else, someone just filmed something too close to that, someone just adopted a baby and they don't want to be away from their baby. So out of the choices that we had, I think Kate was a no-brainer because she channels Darcy. I mean, she is Darcy, pretty much. But she has that Darcy command of a room, and she's very charming and can be. So I thought she was perfect. Didn't you like her performance? Did you like her in it? I thought she was great. I like her. She's a cool girl.
Why London? When you quit your job and decide to write for a year, why do that in London?
Why do it in London? Well, if I had been really brave, I would have gone to like Italy, and written Eat, Pray, Love. I wanted an adventure. I wanted to do something. I had followed the set path: college, law school, the right law firm, just all these safe choices. And I was facing turning 30. It was 2 years. I was 29 when I moved there, and I wasn't married. I didn't have kids, and I wanted to just do something completely different. And to me, that was as different as I could get and still be in my safety zone. This is the language, and my mother's a huge Anglophile. My sister had lived in London and worked at Harrods on a work study program, so it wasn't so foreign to me that I was But it was great. If you're writing a novel, move to London. It rains all the time. You have no friends there. Your friends don't wake up till 1 o'clock. I got a lot accomplished in London. So it's such a romantic sort of feel to it. There's something about London and the rain. But so, any other questions? Sure. Are you from Chicago? I saw your shirt.
Oh, yeah.
I am too, even though I was born in Baltimore.
That's funny.
I like the
was
White
wondering
Sox too.
How you knew, if there was something in my face or something.
No, you do. You have that wholesome look.
I was just wondering who you like to read in your spare time, assuming that you have spare time.
Yes, I mean, I always you always have to make time for reading. So especially, it's kind of nice to be able to to buy books and write them off as an author, and then to read books and feel like this is part of my job. I have to know what's being. But I like a lot of. I really read a lot of different things. I like mostly women writers because I think they tend to write more about relationships. But so I love Anne Patchett and Alice Munro and Elizabeth Berg and Eleanor Lippman. I love. But one of my favorite writers is J.R. Mulringer, who's here at the festival. He's speaking at 5:00. But he wrote The Tender Bar, and he was the ghostwriter for the Open, and he's I think one of the best writers. I told him I think you're one of the best living writers. There's some dead ones who are better, but so he's fantastic. And I like Tom Perrotta because he tends to write more about relationships. I do if you're looking for a longer list and trying to think of what to read next. I do have it on my website, like a long list of 20 or 30 authors who I love to read. So it's a little bit of everything.
What is one piece of advice, career-oriented, that's best resonated with you and you would like to pass on to women in their mid to late 20s working in the creative industry and trying to make ends meet?
Creative advice specifically tailored to the creative field and industry? Well, I mean, I think if I could just be a bit broader in my answer, I would just say, make sure. Did you give me an age group? You said 20s, 30s?
Yeah, 20s.
I just think, make sure you're doing. I mean, it sounds so simple and cliche, but just make sure you're doing. You're going down a path that's making you happy and it's fulfilling on some level. I mean, no job. I mean, you have to be practical. You have to pay your bills. No job you're going to love all the time, but sort of try to. I think it's important to fast forward your life in 5 years and see where will I be if I stay on this path, and is that a good thing or is that not a good thing? And if it's somewhere you don't want to be, then you're really working. You're spending a lot of time and energy, working for something that you don't particularly care about. I mean, that was one of the things. Beyond the fact that I hated the law firm, I hated my job on day one. Once I got past that, I would look around and there were some lovely people there. I have very close friends who are still there. But when I looked at the women partners, there was not one among them who I wanted to be, whose life I wanted, for one reason or another. But I had no role models and no sort of I didn't want I wanted children. This one didn't have children. This one never saw her children. This one, seemed miserable. So I think it's just important to look forward and say, where do I want to be? And I mean, again, it sounds very obvious, but just to follow your heart. And I think sometimes doing that is riskier than not, because when you go after something you really care about, there's a much greater downside if you don't get it. It's like going after the guy you really, really want to be with, as opposed to the one who's really nice to you and it's fine. Because if that other one doesn't work out, you'll be devastated. And if the okay one doesn't work out, other fish in the sea. So for me, I think that was a pitfall and with jobs and life and everything else. And I think it's important to say, take those risks. And if it doesn't work out, it really is the journey. I mean, if I had gone to London and written something borrowed, and it could have just as easily been rejected. I mean, when you think about the fact that it's just one particular editor reading the book in her office with her mood and whatever's going on in her life. I mean, it's so subjective. It could have just as easily all been rejection letters. And let's say that I hadn't tried to write again. I think I would have. But would those years have been wasted? Would those two? Absolutely not. Because I took that chance. I proved to myself that I could do something. So it's really, you can't be so results oriented in life. You have to look more at the journey, I think. Aren't I wise? And do two more and then sign, folks?
That's perfect, yeah. Anyone else? Question?
As a reader, one of the things I've noticed is that sometimes if a novel becomes a film, there are qualities in a character in the novel that you find objectionable. Having a really attractive, charismatic actor sort of makes some of those qualities a little easier to take. Did you find that that was the experience that you had with Something Borrowed, or what you're sort of looking toward with some of the other books that you've had optioned?
Are you just more narrowly? Are you sort of saying that because Colin Egglesfield is so fine that we forgive his immoral behavior more?
That's one way to look at it, but yeah. I think it applies. To other books as well that I've read. Not just yours.
I think in general that's. I read Molly Smith's next movie is called Beautiful Creatures. It's like a YA series, and I read the comments in the trailer, like Ethan. I guess his name's Ethan. I haven't read the books, but he's like, oh, Ethan isn't nearly hot. Ethan isn't cute enough. Ethan, they're just dumping all over this actor. And I think in general, that's just sort of our society and what people want. They want the really attractive actors and actresses. So, I think that's part of it. As for whether we forgive them more for those things, I'd have to think about that. I think in some ways you penalize people more. Sometimes we can be harder on those who we think, have the perception of having it all because they look a certain way when, they could just be as vulnerable as the next person. So I'm going to think about that one on my flight home. That was a good question. So do you have one more?
You spoke earlier about themes that you've tackled in your books, like adultery and infertility and now adoption. Is there a theme that you would like to tackle, but you're somewhat hesitant as a writer to take on?
I don't think there's any theme that's a good question. She asked if there's a theme that I would want to write about, but I'm hesitant to write it. Correct? I think there are certain subject matter that I don't think I'm ever going to write about, a sister dying or a child dying. I can't do that. So am I afraid of tackling it, or do I just not want to spend a year with that heavy heart? It's hard to say. As far as, I think, themes, I don't usually write with a theme in mind. Like the theme emerges. So like premises, there's, I think what's something's interesting going on over there. I will say I've been hesitant to write from a male's perspective, but I really, really, really want to. I want to write from Conrad's perspective. And I just have to convince my editor that women will still buy the book because apparently women buy fiction. Something good's going on over there. Should we go check it out? Well, on that note, do you like the way I orchestrated that? I would love to sign your books or speak to you more if you have other questions. And just want to thank the festival and the Baltimore Sun and all of you one more time. I really appreciated it. It's such a nice day and a great event. Thank you.